The brutal conflict, of course, continues daily in Syria. Let's get some perspective now from Awa Damon at CNN Beirut. Awa, the talking continues diplomatically and otherwise, but what about inside Syria?
Well, that's exactly why all of that diplomatic wrangling is such a source of bitter frustration for all of the opposition members and even Syrian civilians on both sides of the spectrum who have really been bearing the brunt of this violence. Just to give you one example, Michael, late last night, before President Obama spoke, I was Skyping with an activist who is inside a neighborhood, a town that is just outside of Damascus. He was saying that they have been under siege for months now. They've effectively run out of food and medical supplies. Children there are suffering greatly. And he was saying, people would stop talking if just one of these key leaders would come and live the way we are for an hour, not even a day, just an hour, to feel the fear that just grips you when you hear incoming artillery, incoming bombs, not knowing where it's going to strike. That even greater fear when a bomb does strike nearby and you can try to duck from the shower that is created by the shrapnel, running outside, seeing all of the victims, trying to tend to the wounded. He was saying if these global leaders could just smell that scent that is created when blood mixes with gunpowder, when blood mixes with metal, he said that he was sure that these various nations and key leaders would have to be able to, had they just experienced that for an hour, find a shred of compassion and humanity and put their differences aside. The great issue when it comes especially to the opposition here is that this is a debate about securing Syria's chemical weapons. It's not a debate about protecting various opposition strongholds from Syria's conventional weaponry. And people will be making the point persistently that if the U.S. is going to tout the fact that the very threat of a missile strike was able to bring the Russians, to bring the Syrians to deal with their chemical weapons stockpiles, well, why is that same stick, that same threat of violence not being used on what some would say is an even more critical issue when it comes to the conflict in Syria, and that is trying to bring about some sort of a ceasefire to, at the very least, Michael, open humanitarian corridors into these various besieged areas throughout the entire country.
Yeah, all good information there. What is the opposition saying about whether they would play ball with the notion, and it does seem like a very problematic notion, of weapons inspectors coming into the country, trying to secure these many weapons sites, chemical weapons sites? Would they be likely to play ball? And even if the FSA, for example, said they would, there are other elements of the opposition who might see blue helmets and think game on.
Yeah, and that's the issue with the opposition as it stands currently. The rebel fighting force, even the political opposition, are incredibly fractured, and they do have very different ideologies. That's something that they're going to have to deal with. That being said, it is believed, though, that the Syrian government's stockpiles of chemical weaponry are still in Syrian government control, in areas that they control. So presumably, if access were to be required, there might be the need for negotiating ceasefires to secure certain routes to allow those inspectors to reach those areas. And yes, most certainly, when it does come to these more extremist elements of the opposition, there are absolutely no guarantees. Let's look at what happened to previous UN missions, Arab League monitors, when they were in country. They were shot at, they were caught in the crossfire, and that's just the beginning of a set of problems that is going to face the potential implementation of this Russian plan. If it does move forward, just identifying the sites could take weeks, securing them months, and actually destroying the stockpiles, experts say that could take years, Michael.
Awa Damon there in Beirut. Appreciate it as always, Awa. Thanks so much.